Welcome back to another podcast interview. And today I have the honor to welcome Guy Kawasaki. Guy is the former chief evangelist of Apple. By the way, he quit Apple twice. He is the chief evangelist at Canva, brand ambassador for Mercedez Benz, author of 15 books and a lot more that we can talk about in the interview.
Yeah,
So thank you very, very much for joining. I'm really happy to have you here.
I'm glad to be here. And, you know, you're in Germany, right? And I'm a Mercedes-Benz brand ambassador. So I love German cars.
Let's see if we can see us in Stuttgart or Berlin at any time.
Ah, anytime you want.
I think it's more about you coming to Germany, but I will figure that out. So that's not a problem. I can fly anywhere because Germany is pretty small compared to the US. So that's not a
Yeah,
problem.
okay.
As it
I
was,
I've spent many an hour in the Frankfurt airport. Believe me, man, it's the most confusing airport in the world.
it is. That's why I don't fly from there.
On the other hand, a direct opposite, Munich. I love the Munich airport. Munich airport, you get off your airplane and sometimes there's a Mercedes or a Porsche waiting for you, take you to your next flight. And Munich is good.
That means that you're flying at least business or first class, which is not my normal way to fly and travel, but I think that's totally fine. And
Well,
I think it will happen to me at some point, but it didn't
okay.
yet.
When I was your age, I was flying in coach, so don't
Yeah,
worry.
so that's the same for me. As I'm 22, I have a lot of time to get to first class, so I don't really,
Okay.
feel bad right now. What I find is interesting that you started at Stanford University,
Yep.
and I really had to love when you told the story that you were paying some of the checks with money from Las Vegas, as you
Yeah.
and your father were playing a bit of poker there and some other.
Well, it was craps, but yeah, close enough.
Okay, sorry, then I didn't recognize it and that much. But how do you feel about looking back to all the achievements that you have in the age that you have right now, and you wrote the book and you really got through all the details in your life and tried to
Yeah.
pull out wisdom from there? How
Yeah.
was the feeling while writing the book?
It was very satisfying because I've had a lot of experiences in my life that have generated a lot of wisdom, and I wanted to pass the wisdom on. I don't want people to think I've gone through my life doing everything right, because that's certainly not the case. And at least if you read my book, you'll know what to avoid. So that was a valuable perspective, and I wanted to leave something where I helped empower people. But I want to be perfectly clear about this book. It's not a memoir or autobiography in the sense that, you know, Ferdinand Porsche could have an autobiography, or Nelson Mandela, or Michelle Obama, but not Guy Kawasaki. Yeah, my life is not that dramatic. There won't be any movies about my life. But having said that, I'm probably in the sweet spot of many people's lives about the kind of decisions, the kind of wisdom that would help them.
That's what you say, that you don't earn or whatever an autobiography. I think
Yeah.
some other people might think different, but it's very interesting. What I really loved about the book, as we are all living in a business world at some point, and
Mhm.
everybody is just talking about business nowadays,
Yeah.
that you really brought in family, sports, and everything else to really make it different from all the books that are coming out right now, which I really, really loved and I really appreciate. And what I also think is an interesting point is that you started um, learning new sports activities with your children
Very late. Yes.
very late. I think starting with 60, surfing, 62, something like that.
Surfing was 62 and hockey was 48. And many people, what they do is they make their kids, or they encourage their kids to take up their profession or their sport, right? So if you're a football player, you make your kid take up football, hockey, or basketball, or I don't know, whatever it is, surfing or knitting or whatever it is. I had the opposite. And so when my two older sons took up hockey, I took up hockey. And my daughter took up surfing, I took up surfing. Uh, Having said that, I drew the line at one place because one of my sons is now a wingsuiter, and wingsuiting is something I will not do. I draw the line there.
Yeah, okay, I can understand that because I think wingsuiting is something, it sounds so dangerous, but I think you told or you wrote about it in the book that if you know some of the or how to do it, it seems not to be that scary anymore. But I think
Well, you're not gonna get me to try that. And listen, you don't just go out and go wingsuiting. I think you have to take about 200 or 300 parachute jumps before you can do a wingsuit jump. So that ain't happening for me.
a lot of hours that you would have
Yes, yes.
to
This is
invest.
not something it's not something you just go on a weekend dare.
What what I'm interested in at the moment is I think you talked about it a bit in the book, but I'm focusing on the topic right now a bit. And
Hmm.
I think a question that might interest a few people as you work with people like Steve Jobs and whatever, and I don't want to make it about Steve Jobs and whatever, but what role did mentors play in your life?
Yes. So I had 2, 3 mentors in my life. One who taught me sales, one who helped me navigate Apple. They were very valuable. They helped me avoid many mistakes. They also sort of paved the way for me. The term we like to use in the U.S. for parents who do this is they're lawnmower parents, in that they're in front of you and they just mow everything down, so it's easier for you. So I had a few mentors who kind of mowed a few things down for me. Very valuable. Although I will tell you, I don't consider myself a very good mentor because I I have 4 kids, and raising 4 kids is hard enough. So I don't really have any mental capacity to help anybody else. Um, I can make things move, but I can't make them move all the time for a small group of people beyond my family. How's that?
I just wanted to know about your mentors and how
Yeah.
you liked it and not about you being a mentor as you are as a parent. It's like you're mentoring in any way you're mentoring your children as well. So I think
Yeah.
for children are a lot um, to do. So even when I do not have the experience with that, I don't think, and that was also not a question, what about you mentoring,
Yeah.
but more like how important mentors have been or not.
Very.
Regarding your time at Apple,
Yes.
I think you were talking a bit about that not everything was perfect all the time and you had some struggles there. But I do not want to talk too much about Apple, but what did you learn at Apple that you are now using at Canva?
Yeah. Well, I think that uh, there's many lessons from Apple that I use at Canva and in general. So one lesson is that your current customers can't necessarily tell you how to truly be innovative. Basically, they will tell you to build whatever they're getting from you in a better, faster, cheaper way. Right. So if you're buying an Apple II from Apple, you're not going to tell Apple to create a Macintosh. If you're buying a Macintosh from Apple, you're not going to tell Apple to create an iOS device. Another thing that I learned is that design counts. It's certainly counted with Macintosh, and it certainly counts with the user interface of Canva. Another thing is that I learned that if people truly love what you do, they will go just leaps and bounds beyond what you think and help you. There are people who are Macintosh evangelists. There are people who are Canva evangelists. They're not shareholders. They're not employees. They just love what you do. And so they view it as they're telling their friends and relatives to use something, not because it's good for them, but because it's good for the other person. And that is a very good definition of evangelism.
Very interesting because I think a lot of people in my age might
Hmm.
not really understand what evangelism is about and
Yeah.
why it's so important. Because I think without your work as an evangelist, I might not use my MacBook right now with all the software that I have.
That's possible. I mean, I don't, it's not like my work or my effort or whatever that I was indispensable for Apple. But yeah, I helped out. So,
What I also think you gave as an advice for younger people is that you, or also for everybody who might be a designer, a freelancer in any case, or want to achieve something maybe more than the normal people is that you have to work for free and put in the work up front,
Yeah.
which is a very, very interesting point nowadays where everybody wants to have everything right now. And that also means cash for the work you do right now, or
Yeah. And listen, there are going to be a lot of people who disagree with what I just said, or what you just said that I said. Um, you know, the example I use is, of course, graphic design. That when I wanted a book cover designed, I, put it out on social media, and I got 750 designs, and I picked one, and only that one person made $1,000. So the graphics design industry would say that I exploited 749 people, and I only paid one. My attitude is, listen, I gave 750 people who would have never had a shot. So in my own career, I have given hundreds of free speeches, okay? And these free speeches led to paid speeches, because you give a free speech and somebody says, oh, Guy was great. My husband, my wife is having a corporate meeting. They need somebody like him. So a free speech led to a paid speech. If I had the attitude that I will not do any free speeches, I would not have nearly as many paid speeches. And so, you have to give to get.
yeah, it's very interesting. As I mentioned, a lot of young people right now, as we are used to getting everything in the moment,
Yeah.
are maybe pretty unsatisfied by providing work first and then try or wait for receiving something as a reward.
Well, they
So
better get over it, because that's how the world works.
sure. And I think you might not know that, and some of the listeners as well. I think I'm managing that quite well. Not perfectly, but it's okay. But I think, and I see it with a lot of my friends that are, let's say, at university right now, and they're like, "Hey, how can you do hours and hours of podcasting or speaking or talking to younger people and then not getting paid for it?" And I'm like, why shouldn't I? And a lot of people don't have the mindset, and that's very
But
interesting.
it's the right word is mindset, right? So, I mean, athletics is an easy example, so we'll stick with that for a second. But for every professional athlete, there were thousands of hours where you played, practice for free. It's not like, the moment you decide to become a professional athlete in high school, that all of a sudden you're paid. I mean, you're not paid in high school, you're not paid in college, and then you might get drafted, and then you might make the team, and then you might play. And even if you play, you still have to practice beyond, you know, what what is expected during the season. So if you don't have the attitude that you're going to invest in yourself and you're going to work your ass off, lightning may strike. You may just get lucky, but it's unlikely. And so, uh, people ask me, so how long did it take to write this book? Well, in one sense, it took me 2 years. In another sense, it took me 64 years. And that's just how it is. And uh, if you spread what I'm making for this book over 64 years, let me tell you, it ain't much. So it's you just have to pay the price. And if you can't wrap your mind around paying the price, then yeah, I don't know, just go be an investment banker or something. I don't know.
Besides putting in the work up front and paying the price, what would you consider critical advice for younger people at the moment?
Well, I would say that I think younger people, they are and I did this too. You try to optimize that first job out of school, right? And you want to find that perfect thing. And I think you need to like chill out, because over the course of your career, you're going to have so many jobs. You're probably going to forget what your first job was. And as long as you're learning, any job is good. So, don't worry about getting that perfect first job, second job, whatever. Just dive into stuff. And I'm not telling you to be lazy or anything, and not try to your best to get a good job. But I don't think you should, if you didn't get accepted by Apple, Google, Pinterest, Instagram, Facebook, Cisco, whatever, if you didn't get that like Fortune 500 brand job, don't worry about it, because you know maybe you're starting at a company that will become a Fortune 500 company, or maybe you're just gaining a skill set that will someday pay off. And uh, you know that you will forget your first job, I promise you.
Does this also relate to not try to come through university as quick as possible?
Well, that's my theory. Of course, I hope my kids don't apply it too strongly, but I think that the university time in your life is going to be one of the happiest times of your life, when all you had to do was study, and you meet all these new people, and you don't have, kids and cars and mortgages and all that kind of stuff. You should enjoy that, because, man, you have the whole rest of your life to work. Don't be in a rush to go to work.
Let's see if your kids are just surfing during the university life, or if they are
Yeah, we shall see.
not
We
stretching
shall
it
see.
out too much.
Yeah, yeah.
Depends on stretching in your definition. What would you consider a good age to really start thinking about going into the let's say working world?
I don't know, 22, something like that. 20, 22, something like that.
Okay. Just asking, so now I should start working for somebody. So okay, good.
Well, I mean, not necessarily. There are many paths to success. There's no straight and simple one.
Let me ask a different question.
Yeah.
What was the book? I think I know the answer because I read it in your book, but what was the book you gave away the most over the last years?
Gave away? You mean not my own book, obviously, right?
Exactly.
So, well, let's say the book I've recommended the most is If You Want to Write by Brenda Hewlett, because it's so empowered me as a writer, and it can empower anyone to do anything. It's not just for writers. It's for programmers, designers, musicians, actors, videographers. Anything you want to do that's creative, you should read this book, If You Want to Write.
Why did it inspire you so much?
Because it basically said, if you want to write, write. Don't worry about, you don't have a PhD in English. Don't worry about external people saying, how can you be a writer? You don't have an advanced degree. You've never written before. You should ignore the negativity from the outside. You should also ignore the doubt that you have inside that, how can I be a writer? I don't have a PhD in English. Well, you don't need a PhD in English to write. Just write. And same thing. You don't need a PhD in computer science to program. You don't need a PhD in, media arts to be a videographer. If you want to shoot video and make movies, make movies.
So it's really about the mindset that you need to start and not always to procrastinate.
Yes. Well, it's not even procrastination. I mean, you could have the attitude that you're a very diligent, hard worker, and you're going to get a PhD in English, and then you'll write something. And this is saying that you don't necessarily need a PhD in English. Now, if you're getting a PhD in English, I'm not telling you to stop. I mean, that may be your life dream to be a doctorate of English. But I don't think you should make the calculation that, well, in order for me to write a book, I need a PhD in English. In order for me to be a computer programmer, I need a PhD in computer science. In order for me to be anything, I need a master's or anything in anything. Just do it.
It's very important because as well, nowadays, everybody is like, what do other people think about what I'm doing right now?
Who gives a shit? Just do
it. But everybody has the mindset to think first about the other people and then about themselves. Or
That's
lot of
true.
people.
I'm telling you, get over that.
Sure, you're right.
Listen, let me tell you something. If you were to ask most people, what do you think? I'm going to start surfing at 62? Guess what most people would tell you?
That you don't or won't make it.
That's right. And you're too old. Yeah.
But it seems like you made it. So, and
well,
you can stand. You can stand on a board and you can surf. That's made it in the terms of just getting to surf.
And I can have a lot of fun surfing. Yes.
Yeah, that's the most important thing. And I think that comes along with the mindset that you have, and that you don't take life too serious. As I told you before, I heard it in a book that it's happened a lot of times, first with Jackie Chan and then with Robert Kiyosaki, that people mix you up sometimes. Yeah. And even when we met in Frankfurt already, and I told you about Canva, in a mail, I made it I made a mistake and I said I love Rich Dad Poor Dad. And I was like, holy shit, hopefully he won't read it. I mail afterwards immediately with saying sorry. And it was way more embarrassing when I saw that you read the mail, you answered it, and I was like, no way, this couldn't happen. But you don't take it too serious. And you mentioned this in the book, and I think that's also the same kind of attitude that helps you getting over people thinking, oh, he's too old to start
Well, I
surfing.
mean, even more importantly, A, you shouldn't take yourself too damn serious. And B, people make mistakes. So, you know what? Don't hold it against them. And C, like, if you're going to go through life easily offended, you're going to have a miserable life, man. you gotta learn to just ignore people and ignore funny stuff, or appreciate the humor in funny stuff.
The cool thing about your email was, I thought a joke. I'm just quoting. That's what you answered me, while you could have been upset or whatever. So I really loved the response, but I was still
No.
embarrassed.
Okay, so here's the tricky part. So in this book, I tell this story about people confusing me with Jackie Chan and Robert Kiyosaki. And so now sometimes people who've read the book or have heard the story, they come up to me and they say, I love Rich Dad Poor Dad. And every time I have to think, do they really think I'm Kiyosaki, or are they pulling my leg because they read the book? So now it's even harder, because there are many times in the past few weeks, people come up to me and they like say, oh, I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. They start laughing. And I don't know if they're laughing because it's an inside joke, or they're laughing because, I don't know, they're happy or something. So now, and if I went into this whole diatribe, then they're going to say, oh yeah, I'm pulling your leg. I knew you're not Robert Kiyosaki. So I've made it even harder for myself.
I have to be honest, I made the mistake first and then I read the book. And then I was like, shit, I could have said it was a joke. But I fooled myself by answering, no, it was not a joke. I was just mixing up. But yeah,
Okay.
it happened. But it
Hey,
was,
I'm here, right? I'm on your podcast, right?
yeah, definitely. I'm really
Okay.
happy about that. So I don't complain. I just wanted to show that to other people as well, and show that maybe some of them, and even myself, might take ourselves too serious, and maybe we definitely can learn something from that story. So that's what I
You
wanted to
can.
refer to. So what I also think is pretty cool, what you talked about before, is like giving speeches for free, and then some of them lead to paid speeches, but also you're not always out there for money. And sometimes it's also about somebody giving you freebies or whatever. I know that you turned it down in the meantime, but I really love the story where you got access to a webcam in Santa Cruz to check
Yeah.
out the surfing conditions, and then
Yeah.
bought a house there to go surfing. Or maybe you bought a house
Yeah.
before, but
I have, although there's a professional service that now has a better view for where I go, but for a while I had access to one of the most exclusive webcams in the world, because it was on top of Jack O'Neill's house in Santa Cruz. And on top of Jack O'Neill's house in Santa Cruz, that house, if people are familiar, is right on the cliff. I mean, there is not a more famous house in surfing than that house. Maybe the one at Pipeline, but yeah, that was a great view.
so when do you think about, or how do you decide on getting money, doing it for free, or getting something else in return?
It's catch as catch can. I mean, uh, well, there's three kind of main factors, right? So one is it an organization or industry that I like? Another is, do I feel a moral obligation to help this kind of organization? And the third is, how much fun would it be? And so, any two of those three would work. So sometimes, like, I feel a moral obligation to help educators, and the conference is in Kona. Well, hell yes, I'd go. Um, uh, Generally speaking, I, I, what gates me in accepting speeches is that it takes me away from my family. So, if somebody says, well, we're having this conference with 2,000 people in the south of France, and it'll be, just all the the cream of marketing or social media or whatever, or, we're a large brand and we don't pay speakers, honestly, I would turn them down, because that would be something like, okay, so you clearly have the money. You're probably going to spend $2-3 million on this conference, but you expect me to do this for free because you think I want to get on an airplane, fly to the south of France, take 4 days of my life for free, and take me away from my family for 4 days. I won't do it. I won't do it. So some of it is who's asking. And if my perception is you're rich and successful and you're making a lot on this conference, I'm not doing it for free.
To be honest, that sounded like the Lions of Cannes, like the Cannes Lions, but south of France, marketing decision makers.
No, they never have invited me. I'm not good enough for them. So I didn't mean it to point to them.
No, it's fine. I was just trying to figure it out. But I think everybody who can't understand that yet should definitely listen to the last part of the book where your son writes something about you, where you're flying with a private jet just to catch his football game. So that's
Yeah,
how
that
much.
I did.
That's how much you want to be with your family. And I think everybody who wants to invite you should consider a good solution for that struggle if it's not close to where you live.
Yeah, thank you.
I had one more question in mind, but right now I'm like a bit confused. What did I want to ask?
I don't know.
Yeah. I think it's very, very hard to imagine, but can you take us into your life right now and how does it look like? Like, how is a typical week going in the life of Guy Kawasaki?
Well, right now I just finished the book, so I'm doing a lot of these and appearances. But that only happens once every 2 or 3 years. So generally speaking, I get up, I make breakfast for my youngest son, is still with us. And then I take him to school. Then I go to a coffee shop and I answer email and do social media. And then I work, a few hours doing that. Then I eat lunch and then I do more email and social media. And then I go pick up my son. And some days when my wife picks him up, I just go surfing during the day. So, basically I answer email, I do social media, and I surf.
That sounds not too bad.
Yeah,
Also, the coffees and the lunch seems to be a good option.
Beats a sharp stick in the eye. Yeah.
How often do you travel for some events or speeches?
I could look in TripIt and tell you exactly. I think I make about 100 trips a year and probably do 75 speeches. So something like that. 75 speeches, maybe 100 trips a year.
That's a lot, to be honest.
I travel a lot. Yeah.
So how often do you fly to Europe, for example? Or Asia or whatever, like everything that's outside of the US and more than, let's say, 3-4 hours flight?
Well, New York is more than 3 or 4 hours. So,
okay.
But outside the country, 20 times a year, maybe.
Okay.
Something like that. South America, Europe, Asia, Canada. Yeah, I mean, I travel a lot. And I know almost every major city in the world, the airport, the hotel, and the road getting to the airport and back. Because I fly in and out. Like I'll come to, if I were speaking in Germany, I would fly in. I'd get there the morning, the evening before. I would speak the next morning and try to leave the same day. I spend, an ideal trip for me is 24 hours in the city.
Okay. So now I have to ask, as you say that you know the most major airports, compare Berlin to Munich or Frankfurt. Like, how do you like the airports there?
Yeah, I've only been to Berlin 3 or 4 times, so I don't have a particularly strong memory of the Berlin airport. I have a very strong memory of Frankfurt, because Frankfurt, I mean, with Frankfurt, you land and then it seems like you go through security and customs and then you go back out and then you go back through another security, and then every 50 feet there's a sign that says, this is the Lufthansa lounge, and it's pointing in a different direction. And then you go through security again, and Frankfurt to me is just a maze. And there's multiple levels of it. Oh my God.
So we should definitely talk to Mercedes, Benz, and tell them to bring you to Berlin that you can evaluate the airports as well.
Okay.
So, if somebody in my age comes to you and asks you for advice, what is
Yeah.
the most common advice that you give to young people?
Well, I mean, it depends on what they ask. If they're asking general advice, I would say just live off your parents as long as you can and don't worry about your first job. And if you're starting a company, focus on the prototype, not on the pitch.
Okay.
Okay?
So, sure. It's your answer, so why shouldn't
That's
it be
my
mine?
answer. Yeah, exactly.
Focusing on the prototype and not the pitch means don't oversell what you have, or just try to figure out the product, like the MVP first, and then go out with it without
No,
overpromising.
it means that the purpose of a company is to create customers, not create PowerPoint or Keynote or even Canva. Canva has 16 by 9 presentations now. So the key is not the pitch. The key is the company or the product. And the product is the prototype. I mean, in a good pitch, you would do a demo, not have to use slides.
I think that's very important for a lot of entrepreneurs out there that start a company right now. So
Mhm.
very, very interesting. Thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome.
Um, let's see where I can go in the last, let's say, 5 minutes. So there's a lot of stuff that I could ask you right now. Mm.
Just tell people to buy the book. That makes it simple.
I send it out a few times already.
Oh,
So
thank you.
let's go for let's go for this. Um, I would say, or I would call everybody who listens to the podcast or sees a video or recording of that
Mhm.
to hit me up on Instagram. I put that in the show notes and tell me what key takeaways you had from this interview. Like, what did
Cool.
you like the most? What didn't you? And then between all the answers that I get, I will give away, let's say, 10 books.
Oh,
And I might
okay.
increase the number if I get more relevant messages,
Well,
but let's start
what you
with
should
10.
do, you should send me the link to the Instagram post, and then I'll post it and say, okay, so you want to try and win a book? Go to this Instagram post. Oh, but no, you have to watch the podcast first, right?
Yes, you have to. But I can
Yeah.
send,
So yeah.
I'll send you the link to the
Okay.
podcast, or I'll
Okay.
share it on LinkedIn, and then you can reshare it or whatever,
Yeah.
and then we can do it that way.
So
And
so so send it to me via email, not LinkedIn, because LinkedIn messages is a mess for me. I get too many of them, and so many of those LinkedIn messages are total strangers saying, let's connect. Well, why should I connect with you? Who the hell are you? So that's not an efficient way to get in touch with me.
no, I didn't mean it. I just meant that I posted on LinkedIn first so that you can
Oh,
reshare it.
oh,
I
okay,
send you
okay,
the
okay.
link of
Oh,
LinkedIn in a mail.
okay.
So then
That's better.
everything should be fine. And then you can don't have to type in everything on your own, because I think uh, of course you're doing a lot of social media, but we don't have to increase the time that you spend on social media. So
Yeah,
we can keep that short.
good
So,
point.
okay, let's say if you share it, I have to increase the number, because I can't tell people that I just have 10 books if you share it
Then you have
somewhere.
to buy more.
Let's do 50. Let's do
Okay.
50 if people send me messages on Instagram or LinkedIn, as we share it
Yeah.
there as well.
But wait, before you do this, you understand that 50 books A is going to cost you $1,000 right there. And
I'm
then
sure.
and then what if the question comes from, I don't know, like Afghanistan, and it's not so easy to ship stuff to Afghanistan, or I don't know, Sao Paulo or something. You could spend it could cost you $50 to ship a book.
Let's just say we make that happen somehow, and
Okay.
I'm happy to share the books if somebody is listening
Okay.
from there. Even when it
Okay.
might cost a bit, I know that it will be worth it. So
Okay.
let's go for the 50 ones, and then I
It's
won't
the
increase anymore, but that will be too expensive. But I think I think that's not too bad, and then
Okay.
start from there, and let's see if how many messages we will get. And
Okay.
so,
All right.
what would you want to say about the book in the end, even when we
Okay. So basically, the book summarizes about 40 years of living, and if the listener is familiar with the Chicken Soup for the Soul books, stories and lessons, this is like my personal version of Chicken Soup for the Soul. So short story, and I call out the wisdom for each one. And it's not just business. It's a lot of business, but it's also life. It's, sports and parenting and kids and writing and speaking. So there's a lot of stuff. It's a very broad book about how to live your life.
I can definitely recommend the book. That's also why I want to give it away. So
Thank you.
you're happy to buy it or to send me a message about it, and then please feel free to read or listen to it because it's definitely worth it. I listened to it in the last 2 days, and I had a lot of moments where I needed a long laugh because it was like really, but also a lot of learning. So it's
That's
very,
great.
very important to listen to it, and you will learn a lot. And Guy, thank you very much. I know that you will go to the next appointment in a few minutes.
Thank
So
you. I'm grateful for this opportunity. You take care.
you too have a great day as your day is
Uh,
starting and mine is ending here in Berlin.
I'll,
And
I'll see you on the Autobahn sometime.
hopefully in Germany or the next Me convention, South by Southwest, we will meet again. So,
Okay.
and I'll
Thank
hit
you.
you up. Thank you very much.
Go to Frankfurt Auto Show.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, the IAA? Is it
I
IAA?
International. I don't know, something like
Something
that.
like that. Okay. If
Yeah,
I know that you're coming, I will get there.
Frankfurt.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
See you
Thank you.
there. Thank you
Take
very
care. Bye
much.
bye.
Bye. Thank you very much for listening to the Digital Leaders podcast and the interview with Guy Kawasaki. Just to clear a bit out how you can enter the giveaway and where to find more. So if you want to join the giveaway, then please feel free to subscribe to the newsletter. You can find it on thevaluelab.co/news, or you can go to Instagram, search Digital Leaders Podcast, and then if you click on the link, the last button is the entry ticket for the newsletter. And I am more than happy to announce the winners in 4 weeks. So I will give them the giveaway a bit of time, just because I think it's great to give more people the opportunity that will also listen to this interview because of some others that I might launch. And I'm more than happy as well to announce that the next guest on the podcast will be Bracken Darrell. He's the CEO of Logitech. We talked about his turnaround story with Logitech, and he really, really, really helped this company out of a shitty situation. And I think he quadrupled or sextupled the value of the shares, which means the company value, and it's hilarious how relaxed he is, what great insights he has, and I'm really, really happy to announce the interview already. And if you want to be on track what's happening around the Digital Leaders podcast, there are a few options. I'll link them down below as well. You can follow me, Fabian.Tausch, at Instagram. You can follow the Digital Leaders podcast on Instagram. You can join the LinkedIn community. I'll link it below. Or you can subscribe to the newsletter. I hope you enjoyed the interview, and if you did, I would be more than happy to receive a positive review on iTunes. I think it's the best way to grow as a podcaster and to spread the word, but I will also share the best comments on social media. If you share it, make sure to link my private profile or the Digital Leaders podcast profile on Instagram, for example, or on LinkedIn. And then I will read out the best reviews or the coolest social media posts about it, and in the next episode, in the introduction. And I'm really, really looking forward to this journey. I conducted more than 20 interviews already, so it will be fun. You will have really, really great people joining us in the podcast, and it will be a really, really great journey. Thank you very much for listening. This is Fabian Tausch, and See you next week.